Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions Deep Dive TV Podcast with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Under the Dome, Season 1, Episode 7, titled Imperfect Circles. The episode's description reads as follows. A friend of Julia's goes into labors after touching the dome. Big Jim kicks out Junior. Linda seeks out the Dundee brothers after Rose's murder. Joe and Nori find a second mini-dome that holds a mysterious egg inside it. The episode was written by Caitlin Parrish, 4 episodes in total for her. She also worked on Supergirl. She was actually quite involved with that series. This was based on a book by Stephen King, and the episode was directed by Miguel Sapochnik. This is his only directorial stint on this series, but he did have quite a career. I forgot to take note of any of it, but he does have quite a few credits to his name. Okay. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out our YouTube channel, Core Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on our YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
Okay, so I didn't dislike it as much as I remembered that I did.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good endorsement or not.
Not necessarily, but
for some reason I expected this to be more actiony, more based on like what's happening with the Dundee brothers. Like in my memory, that took up more of the episode. And I don't like actiony episodes and scenes. But in reality, I think that they did a fair job balancing all the character stories in this episode. It is where we have a turning point, a clear turning point where, the mini dome is introduced, and I can tell this is where things start to kind of fall apart a little bit.
Yeah.
Overall picture-wise.
Yes.
But just looking at the episode, it's an okay episode.
So, yeah, this episode is fine. I'm going to go ahead and admit that after watching this episode, that I think I might have been a little harsh on the previous episode. And for a while now.
Okay.
In that, I'm remembering some things like that happen in future episodes, little tiny things that do kind of call back to the previous episode that we were just talking about. Some of my objections still do stand in the fact that I think it is all starts a little suddenly and ends way too suddenly. But there are some things that continue on, like little tiny bits of things that do continue on as consequences. So perhaps I was being a little overly harsh on that episode.
Okay.
And I am a big enough man to admit it. This episode is fine. I did think it was kind of narratively all over the place at times. And it's pretty easy to call out the fact that, spoiler alert, Alice is going to die in this episode. It's just, like, there's a scene that's like, yep, Alice is about to die.
Well, we already know she's out of insulin. It's inevitable that she's not going to make it very long.
But at the same time, I'm kind of wondering why Nori and Joe don't continue their search through houses looking for more insulin. Like, they just give up on that.
Right.
And Nori's off on this, well, we'll just do this thing and hopefully it'll turn off the dome. I mean, that's a shooting for the moon.
Yeah.
Like, you should be thinking, like, more immediate than this. But
sure.
But yeah, overall, this episode is fine. Probably not one of my favorites, but yeah, it's fine.
So this week we have the return of Ben. Andrea Goodell makes an appearance. Ollie Dinsmore is back. It's our final appearance for both Clint and Waylon Dundee. So final appearance for Jarrett Sears and Linz Edwards. No Dodie in this episode.
Right. Oh, so speaking of the Dundee brothers, so I will say that Junior's arc up until this point still is coherent. Still makes sense. I do kind of like what they do with his character in this episode, as far as the Dundee brothers are concerned. Do we have anything else to say before diving in?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, the episode begins with Joe peacefully sleeping when Nori wakes him up, scaring the crap out of him, wearing a gas mask, which kind of...
where'd that come from?
I don't
Why
know.
do we have a gas mask?
I don't know, but it amused me because it reminded me of Teacup.
It does.
Yes,
yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought of that, but it sure did.
So, Nori wants to go talk to the dome, but Joe wants to get his pants on first. And Nori asks if she can watch, and then immediately follows this up with just kidding. And by the way, she's not kidding.
She's not kidding.
Barbie and Julia wake up after a night of carnal activities. She asks them to stay, and they start kissing, but they are interrupted by a knock on the door. It turns out to be a very pregnant neighbor, Harriet, looking for yogurt. She's played by Megan Ketch, 4 appearances on the show throughout the 3 seasons. Given the amount, okay, that is an annoyance of mine. Given the fact that we spend so much time on her character in this episode and her giving birth, she should have been a larger part of this story than she turns out to be.
I'm surprised, honestly, that we do go back to her throughout all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Given she was only in 1 episode of season 1. Because most of the characters that we meet, other than our main cast, don't stick around for 3 seasons.
Right, no.
But we're going to see her, the next time we'll see her will be in episode 204. So she's there.
Yeah.
She's just very much in the background.
Right.
Until, the very end, when she has it comes back that it's like, oh yeah, remember this lady and the baby? They're here.
I'm kind of actually curious because it's quite possible that she made appearances on the show in the background without getting credited.
Oh sure, she could have been uncredited in episodes as well, definitely.
And she has 24 credits in total, including an appearance on Evil, which is a show I've referenced a couple of times in the podcast.
She was in 13 episodes of American Gothic, 12 episodes of Jane the Virgin, and 2 episodes of The Affair.
Ooh, yes, I did notice that one. I didn't bother making note of it because I knew you were going to say it.
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah. So she's 6 weeks from giving birth. Her husband is on the wrong side of the dome. And the conversation is interrupted by Barbie. I'm not sure what to make of her reaction to Barbie. Is she, impressed that Julia's kind of potentially sleeping with this man? Is she like, oh my God, you're having an affair? I'm not sure.
She definitely is like, oh, he's not just staying here.
Right. Yeah, she has some type of reaction. I'm just not sure what to make of it. So Barbie's going to head to town to help Linda because he thinks that the town is still in trouble after the last episode's events. Jim and Junior end up talking. It's not a very pleasant conversation. Jim says that Junior is the one who is sick after Junior basically says he kept Angie down in the storm cellar because she was sick. And he's effectively kicking him out.
Yeah, he's like, you don't live here anymore, peace out.
And he threatens him, if he ever goes anywhere near Angie again, he's going to be sorry. All right, so I'm very curious about Jim's attitude here towards his son. It's kind of contradictory. But at the same time, I'm wondering, is this a show for Angie?
I think partly it is because he knows Angie's overhearing it.
Right.
But also, we know he doesn't give a crap about Junior.
Right.
He's told him before, drink your milk and leave this to the grown-ups.
Right.
I think he, in some part, just is done with his son.
Okay.
And is like, you're the problem.
All right, but he's going to definitely, flip-flop.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to have a lot to say about their relationship next week.
Right, yes. So, Jim offers to let Angie stay, who's clearly overheard this conversation. And she says no, she intends to go home after saying goodbye to Rose. And she basically calls Jim out saying, you want me to stay here because you don't want me saying anything about Junior.
Right. He wants to keep her prisoner without keeping her prisoner.
Right. And Jim basically says that Rose is still laying... she's not in the port. She's at the Rose's Cafe because they don't have a funeral person anymore. They don't have Jim Coggins, or not Jim Coggins. They don't have Lester Coggins anymore because Lester Coggins is dead.
Yeah, and he's like, no one's taken over the mortuary, so we didn't know what to do with her.
Right.
So they put her on a table in the kitchen.
You could still bring her to the funeral home. I'm not sure why that wasn't taken care of.
There's freezers there.
And I remind you that this is Jim's friend, so you figured that he would want to take care of her.
It was just last night, though.
Okay, fair enough. Again,
and
I'm getting caught up in the fact
there
that...
was looting happening. It was kind of a crazy night. They were trying to... Jim was part of the Let's Collect the Water initiative at that time.
Right. So I'm once again getting caught up in the fact that this is happening on a very slow, small time scale than I think it should be happening in. So Jim gives her the keys and tells her to say goodbye for him.
And Angie's like, well, why do you have keys to the diner? We learn that he actually owns the place.
Right.
He lent Rose money so many times to help keep the place afloat that he figured it'd be easier just to buy it. So
it makes sense.
He actually owns the Sweetbriar.
Yes.
Not Rose.
Right. So Harriet leaves Julia's house and sees her husband Greg. But when she goes to touch him, she's suddenly in pain and Greg disappears. It was just a hallucination from the dome, and her water breaks, but it's too early. And Greg is played by Adam Poole. 18 credits for him, including the originals, Batman Beyond Year 1, and the movie Max Steel. And then we have our credits. So what exactly is the dome doing here, and why is it doing it?
Yeah, right? It gave her a vision of her husband, put her in labor.
Right.
it wanted this baby to be born. Maybe the idea is the baby needed to be born before Alice dies in order to save the baby.
Maybe. I'm just not clear on the motivation here. Like, I'm not... the dome doesn't seem to screw with people other than, like, you know, Joe, Nori, Junior,
right.
and Angie, the four hands.
I don't remember...
in this manner.
I remember her being in season 3 with the baby, but I don't remember to what end.
Okay.
Does the baby have some importance to what happens with
Maybe.
the dome people?
Maybe. I guess we'll see
Is
when we get
there
there.
a reason they would want to protect the baby?
Right. I guess we'll see when we get there.
Or, you know...
Or maybe not. Maybe there's nothing else to this.
Maybe she just had a vision because she's hallucinating because she's dehydrated. I don't know.
So you don't think this has any... You're suggesting that the dome might not have anything to do with this?
Well, I mean, later we do bring it up when we talk about Nori seeing a vision of her mom.
Gotcha.
So maybe the baby, maybe because it's a baby, has something to do with prompting the visions.
Maybe.
Like, you know, children are the hands and the babies. I don't know.
Okay. So moving along.
But it was the touching the dome and the electricity, I think, that...
Well, that caused her problems.
That caused her to go
Right.
into labor. I
Right.
don't think, like, that was intentional.
You don't think that...
Specifically.
I don't know, because maybe the dome was making her hallucinate
It
that
made
draw her in.
come to touch the dome.
Right.
But it was the touching the dome that put her in labor.
Right.
Like, she hadn't touched the dome yet.
Right.
Because remember, the first time you touch the dome is when you get a shock.
Right. All right, so when we come back, Linda is not happy because Junior is the only deputy to report to work today.
Yeah, remember all those other ones that we're never going to see again?
Well, we'll see Carter.
We're going to see Carter once more, but remember Georgia and some other kid whose name I don't know?
Yes.
Like, they're gone.
Right.
We never hear from them again.
So Barbie enters from, I guess, the back of the office somewhere. Junior did not notice him before, but Junior is clearly annoyed by his presence. Linda wants to track down the Dundee brothers with Barbie, but Junior wants that job, while Barbie goes on patrol instead. He says he can talk the Dundee brothers down, and Barbie ends up agreeing to this. Now, initially, I'm thinking Junior had an ulterior motivation to go after the Dundee brothers, because he knows what happened to Angie, but he actually does not have this piece of information yet.
Right. He'll get
So,
that later. I think
what he's actually saying here, I think he's actually being sincere.
I think, yeah, he genuinely didn't want anything stupid to happen, which
Right.
is what he says. He knows the Dundee brothers. They're probably his friends. You know,
Right.
they're close in age. He's like, I can talk them down. He doesn't want them to get killed.
Until he learns what he learns. But,
Exactly.
Yeah. So Julia, meanwhile, is helping out Harriet. We see that. Angie goes to Rose's, where she finds Rose under a sheet, and she's, mournful and sad and kind of horrified. She's interrupted by Ben, who she basically threatens with a knife because, she's got some PTSD from the whole fact that she was in a
Right. It's like, why are
dungeon.
you here? Are you
Right.
going to kill me?
Right. And Ben actually recognizes her as Joe's sister, and he basically offers to help her, or she basically volunteers him, hey, can you help me with something?
Right.
Allie oversees people getting water from his well.
And he's being very pleasant.
Yes.
The most pleasant we will ever see Ollie.
Yes. Jim comes to visit. He's coming to bury the hatchet and work together, thinking, hey, I have the propane, you have the water. Well, Ollie says, hey, are you really sure about that? Maybe that propane that you think you have, you don't. And this is a question that both confuses and disturbs Jim.
Yeah.
So Joe and Nori are making out on the dome.
Yes.
And this is actually correct. This is not another Jim feels up Barbie moment. This is actually what happens. They're trying to get a reaction. No, not that kind of reaction, you sick people. Is that a dome in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? Anyway, I'm done with the jokes. But
they note how the seizures have stopped.
Right.
They're trying to get a reaction from the dome.
Right.
But nothing's working.
Joe thinks that something new has to happen, and Nori says, no, I will not engage in carnal activities for the first time in the dome. And of course, this makes Joe get lost, because he's a guy. He's like, oh, wait, we're going to have sex?
He's like, that's not what I meant.
And Nori's like, hey, focus. Well, it's your fault for bringing it up in the first place,
Yeah,
Nori.
she brings it up a lot.
Right, yes. So Jim goes to his propane and finds his propane has been... Oh, yeah, there actually is something more to this.
The Joe and Nori is not just about, having sex against the dome.
Oh, why not?
they come to the conclusion that the new thing they need to do is find the nucleus of the dome. They've done all the things they can think to do touching the dome itself, but maybe there's a nucleus in the middle, and that's where they're going to head to, is the center.
Gotcha. All right, so Jim goes to find to his propane and finds his propane has been commandeered and under the guard by one of Allie's minions, who's basically cut the lock, so his key is not going to matter.
And this is Boomer.
Yeah.
His only appearance on the series. He's played by Jeff Chase. He was in 1 episode of Fear the Walking Dead, 2 episodes of NCIS New Orleans.
Oh, with Scott Bakula.
Yeah.
And basically, Jim takes a beating from Boomer.
Yeah, and he calls him a townie.
Yeah.
So it's really like it's shown that the farmers are all siding with Ollie.
Right.
Against Jim, who is a townie. So it's the town against the farmers. Is what
Except not really, because the townies are not exactly...
part of it?
Yeah. It's they don't have the same animosity towards the farmers that the farmers
but
seem
Jim
to have
is
towards
representing the town as far as anybody's concerned.
Yeah. So Linda and Junior arrive, and Junior isn't... arrive to where? Basically, they're driving around, and Junior is informed about what almost happened to Angie. And this clicks something.
Yeah, it's all Junior needs to hear.
Yeah, this clicks something in Junior's mind.
They almost did something bad to Angie, which he didn't know about.
Right.
Like, he was like, they killed Rose, okay, but, they attacked Angie?
Oh, yeah.
Can't have
Done
that.
for. So, Julia and Harriet are gas-jacked by the Dundee brothers. So, this kind of continues the Dundee's brothers story, which is of course going to end here as well, but also the idea of like stealing supplies, that things are different now because you're not stealing the car because it's not as valuable, as Julia points out. The gas is what's valuable,
right? And we made note that we took Harriet's car,
right?
Because of course Julia's car is electric, and it's going to be a character and an ad throughout the whole series of her electric car and how it works because it doesn't need gas,
right? But eventually they do run out of electricity if you don't charge them, and you do need gas in electric cars, even, don't you?
No. Not a strictly electric car.
No. This is an electric car, not a hybrid.
Right.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and I know I've said this before, but it didn't really start yet, but it will. Where every time we're going somewhere, it's like, we need Julia's car, let's plug it in, and then they show us like what kind of car it is, and it's a giant ad for this car, the whole series.
It's not as bad as Smallville, which did that kind of thing all the time with Chloe's character, who's like a teenager in high school, having this really expensive car that she couldn't possibly afford. She's not a rich person. Her dad is like, So yeah, basically, Smallville was much worse with that. Like, where
a lot of shows have done it. Like,
they were so blatant,
very blatant product advertising, often with cars.
Right? Yeah.
But it's not like one episode. It's like the whole freaking series. We follow Julia's car.
All right.
And so Barbie comes.
Yes, he's
right?
he's on patrol. He's noticed this situation.
So the Dundee brothers leave. Barbie calls it into Linda, saying he spotted the Dundee brothers, and Julia says she has to get Harriet to the clinic, but Barbie's like, I was just there, they're closed. They're closed?
I guess.
Why are they closed? How are they closed?
And actually, that doesn't even make sense, because it's still open for the rest of the series. Like, we see activity happening in there.
Yeah.
There's scenes in this season that take place in there. So I'm not sure, why would you close on unless there's nobody to work today?
They all just needed a day off. They're
I guess so.
Nobody have an emergency today. We're closed.
Right.
Taking a nap.
So they come up with the idea to bring her to Alice instead, because she's the only, actual person.
She's the only doctor anyways.
Right.
There's no doctors at the clinic. They're nurses, but no doctors. Which,
again, brings up the point that they should have been trying to take better care of Alice, because she actually is important.
Right.
But, okay. Junior suggests where the Dundees might be going.
To the salvage yard.
Yeah, and it's basically a place where they used to play hide and seek. And he's ready to go there and kick some ass, but Linda says they're going to arrest them properly. And Junior is very unconvincingly says, yeah, whatever you say, boss.
Right.
I'm not going to harm them or nothing. Joe and Nori continue searching, looking for a way to turn off the dome, going to the center of the nucleus.
And I'm going to point out, this is very important, where they are right now. is the middle of an empty field, and then the edge of the woods.
Right.
That's the nucleus.
Yes.
That's the center of the dome.
Okay.
Remember that in season 2.
Okay.
When we're told the center of the dome is the high school.
Right. Yes.
Okay, it's an empty frickin' field that we're in.
I mean, maybe Joe was just wrong.
But this is where the egg is.
Okay, fair enough. So, Nori asks him why the dome picked them. Joe doesn't know, but he's glad that it did, because this is the first time that anything like this has happened on Earth. And if it didn't happen, he might have not have met Nori.
Yeah.
Aww,
I think he's confident that he's going to solve this and get them out.
Right. Truman seems to have found something, the dog specifically, Truman, and doesn't seem to like it very much. Truman ends up running off, and Joe and Nori continue on, thinking we've come this far, we have to see this through. Ben and Angie get back from burying Rose when Jim comes back in, and he's acting bizarre. Yeah, he just gotten back from kicking his ass, or getting his ass kicked, rather. He's drinking. And
yeah, he came here for a drink.
Ben comes back and says, "Oh yeah, remember me? I was I watched Joe's game or whatever, and that's where we met." Junior. That's what I meant to say.
Joe brings up. No, Ben brings up Junior. Joe's not here.
No, Joe has nothing to do with the scene. And he's basically like, "Oh, well, did you say anything about Junior?" And of course, Angie has not at this point.
Yeah, and she's like, "Nah."
But he basically just continues to act weird and then leaves.
Yeah, he gives Angie an order to clean up the blood on the floor and leaves.
Right. It's just a really weird Jim scene for sure. And so Caroline is trying to nursemaid and a very annoyed Alice. And they end up starting to dance. And this, like I said, this whole scene smacks of Alice is going to die. So even if you had no knowledge of the fact that Alice was going to die, this scene pretty much telegraphs that it's going to happen in this episode.
And this is them both knowing, like, you don't have any meds.
Right.
We're just kind of waiting it out.
Right. Caroline apologizes for bringing her here. She's blaming herself, but Alice doesn't believe that. She thinks that this was a mutual decision, that they brought Nori, that it was Nori, their decision to get Nori to this school. Yeah, it was their decision to come through there.
Carolyn called it that program.
Right.
I'm tracking what we're calling this school / camp / place. But yeah, if they weren't bringing her there, from California... they wouldn't have been stuck under the dome.
Yeah, there were no closer programs, but I think we've beaten that point to death at this point. So they kiss, and this is when Barbie... And by the way, I'm not sure how significant this was in 2013. Not only is this a same-sex relationship where we have a kiss, but this is also an interracial relationship at the same time. Like I said, I don't know how big of a deal that was in 2013.
Well, we already know, the characters made a bigger deal out of it than you'd expect them to today.
Right.
Like, Nori was embarrassed to admit she had 2 moms.
Which felt like maybe a 2000 attitude rather than, like, a 2013 attitude.
Yeah. But it's hard to play stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
We're moving in a different pace. It's hard to remember where things were
where they
linearly like that.
But
yeah, it was definitely... a progressive family.
Yeah, absolutely. Alice comforts Harriet and says she's going to have the first baby born inside the dome. Joe and Nori happen upon a mini dome covered in leaves. Nori sees something inside and ends up dumping water on it to reveal an egg-looking like thing. I don't even know if I mentioned the fact that Barbie, Harriet, and Julia came to the house at this point. Did I mention that at all?
You started to.
Okay. Then, basically Alice ends up taking over and helping them with birth. But anyway, Harriet continues to give birth.
Yeah, we have this whole, labor scene.
She's struggling.
And everybody's being helpful.
Yep. Julia gives her a pep talk, and eventually Barbie gets into the act to help her, offers to hold her hand. All right, so we've seen a couple of scenes recently that happen to involve birthing scenes. You really despise the one in Sullivan's Crossing. We thought Earth Abides was better.
Yeah.
Correct? How do you feel about this scene?
Well, this isn't that scene. That scene's later when
Well,
we actually deal with...
In general.
So a little later in this episode, we're going to find out, and it's the same thing. The umbilical cord's around the neck. Television makes us think that happens 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Because in every example you've stated, the cord was around the neck.
Right. Yes.
This is the better of the three.
Okay.
I'm going to say.
All right.
Because, they made it... They tell us, like, this is dangerous and scary, and we have a whole room full of people helping.
Okay.
And it takes place over multiple scenes throughout the episode.
Right.
Not in 30 seconds of, hey, look, I'm a doctor. There's a cord around the neck, but I saved you. The
Yay.
end.
Okay. All right. So where was I? Okay. Jim is in his office and is visited by Allie. He's still drinking. And basically tells him that Allie is going to call the shots now. He's going to leave Jim in charge, but when Allie says jump, he's going to jump.
Yeah, basically he's like, I'm taking over. I'm in charge now. Like, I own you. I own the town.
All right, so whose side are we supposed to be on with Jim versus Allie? On the one hand...
I think we're supposed to be on Jim's side.
And I kind of find that hard to fathom because he's not a great guy. And but at the same time, Allie seems to be coming from complete and total petty motivations.
Right.
This is all about his feud with Jim.
Right.
Nothing to do with the town.
Jim came to Ollie earlier and
right.
was like, we're in a perfect place to work together. Everything's great. We're going to save this town together. He was offering to let Ollie in.
Right.
Like, we're going to do it together.
So, I'm kind of feeling like, as much of a piece of shit as Jim is, that his motivations, he's power hungry and all that, but he also does care about the town to an extent.
Does. He just, is willing to kill people to do it,
right.
which is the problem.
And Allie is just completely petty. So, I
Ollie's
guess
an asshole.
I guess on that score,
because he doesn't give a crap about anybody.
I guess on that score, even though I find it hard to fathom rooting for Jim in anything, Jim is the one that we were supposed to be rooting for.
I don't hate Jim.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Jim...
You can't because he's played by Dean Norris.
He murders people, but he gets shit done.
Yeah.
He has good intentions.
Yeah.
Usually, when he's not murdering people.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, I just find his morals extremely questionable. But again, he's played by Dean Norris, and Dean Norris is a pretty charming actor who finds, as I mentioned before, the humanity in even the biggest pieces of crap. But anyway.
Dundee Brothers are at the salvage yard.
Yes. Where is that? Okay. So, they're hiding out, but they are quickly outsmarted by Junior. Linda is properly arresting one of them, but that one manages to overpower Linda. The other is running away.
Yeah, so shots are fired.
Right.
Linda and I don't know which brother's which, but whichever brother Linda's with.
Right.
Shots are fired, he dies.
Right.
So she shoots him in the line of duty.
Right. Junior is in pursuit. The other one, the one that Linda did not shoot, falls over, and he's surrendering to Junior.
Yeah, he's begging to be taken peacefully.
Right. And Junior just guns him down.
Shoots him in the head.
And Linda knows this.
And Linda is horrified.
Right. Joe and Nori try to get the dome to open and one of the things that Joe says, which really amused me, was end program. Like this was a holodeck on Star Trek Next Generation.
And you know what's funny? Because I remember the scene happening.
Yeah.
And I've talked to Adam about this scene, before. Like, not now, but, before we started rewatching this series last year. And I didn't know what series this scene was in. I was like, I remember something I watched where the kids, end program. Mm-hmm. And this is it.
Right. So, Nori tries to do it, too. Despite the fact that she was mocking Joe not that long ago, her attempts are not any better. They're along the same lines.
They're talking to the dome, to the mini dome, to the egg, trying to get it to respond, begging it to let them out.
Joe and Nori...
They acknowledge it's from outer space, by the way. They seem to figure that out real quick.
Yeah. Joe and Nori end up touching it. A vision of Alice appears to them, and Norris realizes she needs to get to her mother. Harriet's delivery continues. There's a problem, but Alice is not doing so well, so Barbie has to step in. And I think Alice knows what the problem is, but Barbie doesn't at this point.
Yeah, but Alice is having an attack. She's not well.
Right. Allie's goon at night is packing up some propane in a truck, Boomer, but soon finds himself catching on fire as Jim shoots at the propane and everything blows up and Jim watches triumphantly and very drunkenly. He's still drinking.
Yeah.
Has he been just drinking all day at this point?
So this is Jim's body count moves to 2.
Right.
And was this Junior's first kill? I think it was.
That I can recall. Yeah, I don't think Junior has killed anybody else up to this point. He did, however, trap a girl in a bomb shelter against her will. But
murder, I'm asking.
So Alice has to step back in.
The umbilical cord's around the neck.
Yeah, and Barbie doesn't know how to handle that.
And she's just kind of walking Barbie through it. She's not actually doing it herself.
Do you buy that, though? Do you buy that Barbie is able to do this?
It's better than any of those other shows you mentioned.
Gotcha.
She tells them what to do. They get shoelaces to tie off the cord. It makes sense.
All right.
Way better than those other 2 instances.
That I cited.
Yeah.
So Harriet ends up... the baby is born successfully. Harriet names the baby Alice as Alice holds her. Alice continues to not do very well, and she mentions that she's having heart problems, which is not a good sign.
Yeah.
Angie thanks Ben for helping, and then is approached by Junior. He comes out of nowhere, and basically he scares her, and he's basically like, "Whoa, I'm not here for anything. I'm just like," he basically tells Ben to go home, in a very how should I say? It's very condescending how he is towards Ben.
Yeah, and Ben is smart enough.
Yes,
he picks up. He's like not going to leave Angie alone with this guy.
I don't think I will go home. Thank you very much. I'm going to stay here and protect Angie. Being a stand-up guy. Junior apologizes, saying he can't make her love him. That was his mistake. But she no longer has to worry about the Dundee brothers. And Angie does not look reassured by this. In fact, she looks quite terrified. And Julia... she thinks it's amazing what he did. Joe and Nori come home at this point. Nori asks, "Where's my mom?" She's told she's upstairs. She goes upstairs and sees Caroline, who suggests that she had a heart attack. And Alice and Nori end up talking. Nori says that she's here. I don't think she knows yet that this is going to be the last conversation she's going to have.
I think she did know.
She think so?
I think she knew before she even got to the house.
Gotcha.
Just by that vision from the dome. I'm not sure how she knew, but I think she knew.
Gotcha. Joe outside is greeted by his sister with Ben.
Yeah, they're finally reunited.
He thanks Ben. I'm not sure why.
He thanked Ben for bringing Angie home because she's been missing for the entire series.
I guess, but at the same time, how does he know? How does he know that Ben?
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah. I picked up on that.
Right. So Angie and Nori, they say their goodbyes. Alice thinks the dome wanted Nori there, but wanted Alice to go, and then she ends up dying. Nori runs past Joe crying. Caroline looks at her passed away wife as Harriet cuddles her new baby, and Julia and Barbie end up cuddling as well.
Yeah, and why are they still here?
I don't know.
They're sleeping on the couch.
Right.
This isn't from. You're allowed to go outside in the dark.
Right.
Go home?
They could. So, people have discovered the exploded truck. I believe this was, what's her name?
Andrea. Andrea's there, and she looks at Jim, because remember, she lives next door. Yeah. She's the one who, knew all the propane was here in the first place. She looks at Jim like she knows he's got something to do with this.
Yeah. Jim has basically pretending like he's arrived at the scene, pretended to be shocked by these events, pretending to be sad by what he's seeing, even though he's very much not.
Yeah.
He was. Nori cries out to the dome and asks, "What do you want from me?" And we see the egg glow pink, and that is where the episode ends.
Pink stars are in the egg.
Yes.
Black egg, and there's pink stars in it.
Yes.
Which, if you've been paying attention, that should mean something to you. Mm-hmm. So we're halfway through the season now.
Yes. We weren't already? I thought we were.
This is
the halfway
13,
point.
So yeah. Halfway through this episode was halfway.
Okay, yeah. So when we get to the halfway point in this episode, it was halfway through this season.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. And we're finally at the egg.
We got the egg.
Alice is dead.
We're getting to the stuff that you don't like. The the stuff with Junior that
Yes.
you don't like.
Yes.
And we're going to deal with the four hands.
Is the whole... No, I don't think the hurricane or the tornado thing is next episode. That's probably the episode after.
Next episode is the Ollie stuff.
Okay.
Jim and Ollie stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
And continuing to explore the dome.
Yes.
The mini dome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, next week's one of those episodes I'm not going to like, because the main point of it is the whole standoff between Jim and Ollie. It's one of those action episodes that, And then we're going to, of course, deal with the relationship between Jim and Junior in how they both deal with that situation, and it's not good.
Oh, yeah. That's where he ends up basically stuck in the house. Is that all resolved in that next episode?
I'm pretty sure, because next episode is the last appearance of Leon Rippey as Ollie Dinsmore.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure we do all that next week.
Gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, so I'm keeping the kill count. Junior's at 1 and Jim is at 2.
Okay.
But I don't know if we're going to be able to keep that next week, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people die during that standoff.
Right. Kind of hard to tell who kills who in that episode.
And Linda is at 2.
Yeah.
But both
she's
were
she's
they
a
were
cop.
both in the line
Yeah.
of duty. Neither
Right.
of them were unnecessary.
Yes, I would agree. Basically, both of her kills were necessary. And one of the Dundee brothers in this episode?
She killed Paul.
Oh, yeah, Paul. Right.
Because he was holding the gun to Barbie and Jim.
Right. All right. Do we have anything else to say? Do we have more cast that we need to cover?
Let's look at the cast. Let's see. So there were a lot of new people in this episode. We had Harriet introduced. Boomer and Greg, those were both one-off appearances. We're not going to see those actors again. And the only uncredited listings were 2 people we've already talked about, David Pasqua and Will Smith.
Oh, okay.
Which is funny, because usually we have like 20 uncredited people, but
yeah,
these were more isolated.
Yeah, it was more of a self-contained story than a bigger,
we
broader
didn't have
story.
any like public scenes. The public is resting
after
yesterday. They had enough yesterday. They're all home resting. The clinic's closed. They're taking a nap.
Right, because they spent the whole day yesterday rioting, so they're quite tired.
They're sleeping today, except for the woman having a baby.
Yes.
And the kids making out on the dome.
All right.
And Junior killing people.
Right. All right. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this episode? What'd you think of this podcast? Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at TV and Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership starting at 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribe to the channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.